They called them flops, disasters, career killers. Yet these forgotten sci-fi gems from the 60s now command insane prices from collectors and cultural clout from critics. While studios lost fortunes, today's fans are spending small fortunes to own these visionary failures. Ready to discover the box office disasters that became treasure chests? 13. Planet of the Vampires, 1965. Mario Bava's psychedelic nightmare was not just ahead of its time, it was living in a different dimension entirely. Two spaceships respond to a distress call on a mysterious planet, only to find their dead crewmates walking around possessed by alien entities. Sound familiar? That's because Ridley Scott borrowed heavily from this visual feast when creating Alien. Shot on a laughably tiny budget in Italy, Bava worked miracles with fog machines, colored lights, and leather costumes that would make any biker gang jealous. The fog was not just atmospheric, it was necessary to hide the fact that most alien landscapes were just a couple of rocks on a soundstage. Talk about resourceful. Critics dismissed it as Euro trash when it crashed at the box office. American International Pictures dumped it in drive-ins where teenagers were too busy making out to notice its brilliance. The film vanished for decades until horror aficionados started passing bootleg VHS tapes like contraband. Today, original film prints sell for upwards of $40,000, and even those tacky promotional posters command five-figure sums at auction. Quentin Tarantino owns an original 35mm print and screens it regularly at his New Beverly Cinema. Director Nicholas Winding Refn calls it the most beautiful film ever made about possession in a space. 12. Seconds, 1966. Want a new life? John Frankenheimer's Seconds sold that dream way before Instagram filters made reinvention mainstream. Rock Hudson stars as a banker who pays a mysterious organization to fake his death and give him a new face, new body, new everything. Spoiler alert, the ultimate glow-up turns into the ultimate nightmare. Shot in disorienting angles with fisheye lenses that make you feel like you are having a panic attack, Seconds freaked out test audiences so badly that Paramount practically buried it. Executives could not believe Hudson, America's leading man, would take such a disturbing role. The film tanked harder than a lead submarine, making back less than half its budget. The movie's opening sequence of facial reconstruction surgery was so graphic that women reportedly fainted in theaters. Remember, this was 1966, when The Sound of Music was still everyone's comfort blanket. Audiences wanted escapism, not existential terror about identity and consumerism. Critics called it grotesque, pretentious, and unbearably bleak. Frankenheimer later admitted the commercial failure nearly destroyed his career. But here's the kicker. Criterion Collection's Special Edition Now sells for collector's prices. Original posters fetch upwards of $15,000, and film scholars rank it among the most important American films ever made. 11. Alphaville, 1965. Jean-Luc Godard made a sci-fi film without a single special effect and somehow created one of the most prophetic visions of the future ever committed to celluloid. Alphaville follows Detective Lemmy Caution as he infiltrates a technocratic dystopia ruled by an AI computer called Alpha 60. Using only existing architecture in 1960s Paris, Goddard created a world where emotions are illegal, poetry is dangerous, and algorithms control everything. The studio expected the French New Wave darling to deliver something commercial. Instead, he gave them a philosophical noir puzzle box that confused general audiences into oblivion. It bombed spectacularly outside art house circles, with mainstream moviegoers walking out in droves. Goddard refused to build futuristic sets, arguing that the future already exists in the present. He simply filmed modernist buildings at night, making contemporary Paris look alien through lighting and framing alone. When asked about the low budget, he famously snapped, "All you need to make a movie is a girl and a gun." Critics called it pretentious nonsense, but today's tech critics cite it as eerily predictive of algorithm-controlled societies. Alpha 60's monotone voice declaring logic as flawless feels like every tech CEO testifying before Congress. Original film prints now sell for astronomical sums, and even battered posters command upwards of $7,000. 10. Robinson Crusoe on Mars, 1964. Imagine surviving on Mars with only a monkey for company. Years before Matt Damon grew potatoes in his own waste, Robinson Crusoe on Mars took Daniel Defoe's classic and blasted it into the red planet with startling scientific accuracy. Well, at least by 1964 standards, Paramount Pictures bet big on this space adventure, splurging on Technoscope cameras and lavish special effects. Then they watched in horror as it crashed harder than the protagonist's spacecraft. Audiences stayed away in droves, and the studio lost a small fortune. Director Byron Haskin, who had previously hit gold with War of the Worlds, found himself exiled from major projects. The film's production team consulted NASA scientists to make their Mars survival story plausible. They correctly depicted the thin Martian atmosphere and low gravity years before actual Mars missions, but they also included oxygen-producing rocks and alien civilizations, because hey, it was the 60s. Critics mocked its juvenile adventure premise while hardcore sci-fi fans recognized something special. Famous astronomy writer Carl Sagan actually praised its scientific elements while gently noting its necessary dramatic liberties. Fast forward to today, and original film materials command astonishing prices. A complete set of lobby cards recently sold for $18,500, and an original 35mm print changed hands for over $35,000. The Criterion Collection's restoration sells out with each pressing, making even the DVD a collector's item. 9. Fahrenheit 451, 1966. Books Going Up in Flames isn't just a metaphor in Francois Truffaut's chilling adaptation of Ray Bradbury's classic novel. It's government policy, set in a future where literature is banned and firemen burn books instead of extinguishing fires. This film should have been a guaranteed hit. It had a legendary director, a hot young star in Julie Christie, and source material that was already a bestseller. Instead, it crashed and burned just like the books it portrayed. Universal Pictures lost a bundle when audiences chose more upbeat entertainment over this somber warning about censorship and intellectual freedom. Truffaut, making his first and only English-language film, struggled with the language barrier and later called the experience painful. The film's most shocking element wasn't the book burning, but its eerily accurate predictions. Those tiny seashell earbuds everyone wears in the film, they're literally AirPods, 50 years early. The wall-sized interactive TV screens? Hello! Smart TVs and Zoom calls. Even the population's addiction to prescription drugs and reality television feels ripped from today's headlines. Critics called it cold, emotionless, and lacking the novel's fire. Bradbury himself had mixed feelings, praising the visuals but lamenting changes to his story. Yet today, original posters sell for up to $25,000, and first edition promotional materials fetch astronomical prices. Even the soundtrack album, once gathering dust in bargain bins, now commands up to $3,000 from collectors. 8. The Creation of the Humanoids, 1962. Imagine making a film so ahead of its time that even Andy Warhol called it a masterpiece. The Creation of the Humanoids looks like it was filmed in someone's basement with leftover Halloween costumes. Yet it tackled topics most blockbusters wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Artificial intelligence, robot rights, human prejudice, and even robot romance. This ultra-low-budget oddity follows a world where robots called clickers are taking over jobs after a nuclear war has decimated the human population. An anti-robot activist discovers his sister is dating one of these machines, triggering a bizarre chain of philosophical debates that would make Philip K. Dick blush. Filmed for roughly the price of a used car, the movie bombed spectacularly. Audiences in 1962 wanted aliens and ray guns, not robots discussing metaphysics in static, theatrical scenes. The film was so low budget that the robots literally walked at half speed to appear mechanical, since actual robot costumes were too expensive. Critics either ignored it entirely or mocked its cardboard sets and amateur acting. Yet this weird little film predicted everything from modern AI ethics debates to transhumanism decades before these became mainstream concepts. The final twist, revealing that humans are being secretly replaced with identical robot duplicates containing human memories, predates Blade Runner by 20 years. 7. La Jetée, 1962. A 28-minute film composed almost entirely of still photographs somehow became one of the most influential sci-fi works in cinema history. Chris Marker's La Jetée tells the story of a man sent back in time after World War III to save humanity, only to discover he's been haunted by a childhood memory that was actually a glimpse of his own death. Released in French art house theaters, this experimental short film made practically nothing at the box office. Most mainstream audiences never even knew it existed. Shot in black and white with a budget that would not cover the catering on a modern film, Marker created his post-apocalyptic world through narration and hauntingly static images. The film contains only one moving shot lasting a few seconds, when a sleeping woman briefly opens her eyes. This momentary animation in an otherwise frozen world shocked audiences more than any expensive special effect could have. Critics praised its artistic merits but considered it too avant-garde for commercial success. Then something extraordinary happened. Terry Gilliam saw it and turned it into 12 Monkeys, a $168 million grossing blockbuster. The Criterion Collection enshrined it. Film schools made it mandatory viewing. Suddenly, this commercial nonentity became one of the most studied films in history. 6. These Are the Damned, 1963. Radioactive children locked in a government bunker might not sound like typical family entertainment, and audiences in 1963 definitely agreed. Joseph Losey's These Are the Damned follows a group of tourists who stumble upon a secret government project raising children who can survive nuclear radiation, essentially breeding the next evolution of humans in captivity. Columbia Pictures was so disturbed by Losey's final cut that they shelved it for almost 2 years, then released a heavily edited version that made little sense. Unsurprisingly, it bombed spectacularly, with confused audiences walking out of theaters wondering what the heck they had just watched. The film's most shocking scene shows scientists calmly discussing breeding programs for children who are essentially doomed to live their entire lives underground, all delivered with the same bureaucratic detachment as a weather report. This clinical approach to eugenics was too much for 1960s audiences still processing the horrors of World War II. Critics dismissed it as exploitative trash, missing its blistering critique of military scientific ethics. Famed critic Pauline Kael, however, recognized its brilliance, writing that it may be the most important science fiction film since Things to Come. Decades later, Hammer Film's restoration of the complete, uncut version sparked a collector frenzy. Original promotional materials now fetch over $10,000, and an uncut 35mm print recently sold for $45,000 at a private auction. The film, Losey, considered a career-killing mistake, has become his most sought-after work. 5. The Time Travelers, 1964. Scientists accidentally open a time portal to a post-apocalyptic 2071, where mutants roam the surface while the last remnants of humanity prepare to leave Earth forever. The Time Travelers could have been just another cheap sci-fi romp, but director Ib Melchior packed it with ideas decades ahead of their time. 3D printing, suspended animation, android workforce, and even a mind-bending time loop ending that would influence countless later films. American International Pictures released it as a B-movie on double bills where it promptly tanked. Made for roughly $200,000, it barely made its money back. Audiences in search of monster action found themselves watching philosophical discussions about humanity's future instead. The film's most incredible sequence shows android duplicates being created through a process that looks exactly like modern 3D printing. Remember, this was 1964 when most people didn't even have color televisions yet. The androids themselves were eerily realistic, raising questions about artificial life decades before Westworld or Blade Runner. Critics dismissed it as forgettable drive-in fare, with the New York Times calling it tedious and amateurish. Yet this little film that couldn't has become an obsession for collectors. Original posters that once decorated theater lobbies now command upwards of $7,000, and even lobby cards sell for thousands. 4. Journey to the Far Side of the Sun, 1969. Imagine discovering an exact duplicate of Earth on the opposite side of the sun, identical in every way except everything is reversed, including the writing on signs and which hand people favor. This mind-bending premise powered Journey to the Far Side of the Sun, a visually stunning film that bankrupted its studio when audiences stayed away in droves. Produced by Jerry Anderson, famous for puppet shows like Thunderbirds, this was his big move into live-action filmmaking. Universal Pictures gave him a decent budget, which he spent on incredible special effects and miniature work that still looks impressive today. The results were gorgeous, but the box office was catastrophic. The film's most stunning sequence shows an astronaut slowly realizing he's on a mirror Earth when he notices his watch is reversed and writing appears backward. It's a brilliant visual that influenced countless films about parallel universes. That followed. Even the spacecraft designs were so realistic that NASA reportedly asked to study them. Critics called it confusing and pretentious, while the audience word of mouth was non-existent. It disappeared from theaters faster than a rocket-breaking orbit. Director Robert Parrish never helmed another major feature film again. Today, this commercial disaster has become a collector's goldmine. Original posters regularly sell for over $5,000, and a pristine 70mm film print recently changed hands for an eye-watering $70,000. The model spaceship used in filming sold at auction for $180,000 in 2022. 3. Crack in the World, 1965. Scientists drill into the Earth's core with a nuclear missile, accidentally creating an unstoppable crack that threatens to split the planet in two. This eco-disaster nightmare hit theaters years before climate concerns went mainstream, making it both commercially unsuccessful and prophetically terrifying. Paramount Pictures expected a straightforward disaster flick, but got something far more unsettling. Crack in the World portrayed scientists unleashing forces they could not control, with the hubris of man literally breaking the planet. Audiences in 1965 were not ready for this level of environmental doom, and the film barely made back half its budget. The most jaw-dropping sequence shows the literal birth of a second moon, torn from Earth's crust as the planet heals itself by ejecting damaged sections into space, all depicted with practical effects that still look impressive today. The miniature work showing cities crumbling into massive fissures required over 6 months of painstaking labor. Critics called it alarmist, pseudoscientific garbage, and unnecessarily bleak. Even its stars distanced themselves from the project. Dana Andrews later admitted he took the role solely for the paycheck, never expecting anyone would remember the film. 2. The Day the Fish Came Out, 1967. Nuclear weapons lost at sea. A tourist invasion on a remote Greek island, fashioned so bizarre it makes Lady Gaga look conservative. The Day the Fish Came Out combined ecological disaster with absurdist comedy in ways that left 1967 audiences completely baffled. 20th Century Fox expected director Michael Kakoyannis to deliver another hit like his acclaimed Zorba the Greek. Instead, he gave them a surrealist environmental parable where atomic contamination causes fish to leap from the sea, and mysterious government agents dress in increasingly outlandish outfits to blend in with tourists. The studio lost millions on what executives later called the fish that got away. The film's most outrageous element was its costume design. Government agents wear neon-colored short shorts, knee-high boots, and geometric tops that look like they came from another planet. These fashion choices, meant to satirize tourism and commercialism, were so ahead of their time that they've been referenced in recent runway shows by Gucci and Balenciaga. Critics were merciless. The New York Times called it a catastrophe, while Variety described it as incomprehensible. Audiences fled theaters faster than the film's radioactive fish jumped from the ocean. Kakoyannis, previously Oscar-nominated, found himself temporarily blacklisted from major studios. Today, this commercial disaster has become a cult phenomenon. Original posters sell for upwards of $8,000. And the wildly impractical costumes have sold at fashion auctions for over $15,000 per outfit. The soundtrack album, once filling discount bins, now commands prices up to $3,000 for sealed copies. 1. Privilege, 1967. A rock star is manipulated by church and state to control youth culture and prevent social rebellion. Sound like a conspiracy theory? In Peter Watkins' pseudo-documentary Privilege, it's government policy. Starring Manfred Mann frontman Paul Jones and model Jean Shrimpton, this scathing satire on celebrity worship and political manipulation stunned audiences with its uncompromising vision. Universal Pictures had no idea how to market this hybrid of concert film, political thriller, and mockumentary. Released during the Summer of Love, its cynical portrayal of rock music as a tool for social control alienated the very counterculture audience it depicted. It disappeared from theaters within weeks, losing a substantial amount of money. The film's most shocking sequence shows the rock star performing at a rally that deliberately evokes Nazi imagery, with thousands of fans mindlessly following his politically charged instructions. This disturbing fusion of entertainment and fascism was too uncomfortable for 1967 viewers still processing the actual rise of fascism within living memory. Critics were divided but mostly hostile. The New York Times called it obvious and superficial, while Bosley Crowther dismissed it as pretentious twaddle. Audiences simply stayed away, and the film vanished into obscurity so completely that many believed all prints were destroyed. Today, this commercial catastrophe is considered a visionary masterpiece. Original posters sell for up to $12,000, and a recently discovered 35mm print changed hands for over $40,000. Even vinyl albums featuring Paul Jones's songs from the film command prices upwards of $5,000. From Radioactive Children to Mirror Earths, these box office disasters weren't just ahead of their time, they were practically living in our time. Which of these prophetic failures would you pay thousands to own? Or would you rather studios stop chasing easy money and take more risks like these visionary flops? Drop your thoughts in the comments.